like debilitating issue where when I'm shopping or cooking or packing and moving my head back and forth, I get dizzy and nauseous, and I've been having like anxiety attacks in public spaces that I...
BVD, binocular vision dysfunction. Let's talk about it because it is actually much more common in the ADHD and autistic populations than it is in the general population. It's estimated that somewhere around 15% of folks with ADHD and 21 to 50% of folks with ASD deal with some sort of binocular vision dysfunction, as compared to 8% of the general population. And I actually also just went through my own diagnosis/re-diagnosis of my own vision issues and went through vision therapy, and it was game-changing for me. My vision issues were actually related to a traumatic brain injury I sustained about 20 years ago, but still same issue, same symptoms, and same pretty life-changing results by getting it diagnosed and treated. I'm going to tag this creator so you can watch her whole video and listen to her story, because this is, unfortunately, I'm finding not uncommon in the neurodivergent community. Now, in my situation, I sustained a traumatic brain injury, and it took about 3 years to get my brain injury diagnosed. And once we got my brain injury diagnosed, we knew that there was what I was told was visual spatial damage as a part of my brain injury. And at the time, the most apparent side effect I was dealing with was that it was incredibly difficult for me to read. I literally could not follow the words on the page, or when I did manage to get through a reading, I could not retain any of it. So I met with an occupational therapist as part of my whole traumatic brain injury rehab. We talked about it in a few sessions, and I was sent on my way with some improvement. Fast forward to early 2024, and I fell down the BVD rabbit hole here on TikTok and realized that the reading issues and driving and anxiety issues that I were having were actually probably related to my vision and not to anything else. So I found myself a neuro-ophthalmologist, which is the specific specialist who's really dialed in on understanding what binocular vision dysfunction is and like the specific dysfunctions under that umbrella, and is most trained to diagnose that and treat that. So it turns out I had several issues. I spent about 4 months doing vision therapy, a lot like physical therapy. I had little exercises that I had to do at home. And by the end of those exercises, all of my symptoms were gone. Okay, and I know you're gonna ask what are my symptoms, so let's talk about that part. So for me, the number one thing I was noticing was it was getting really hard to read again. I couldn't get myself to pay attention to the page for more than a few seconds at a time. Depending on things like the font and the line spacing, it was really hard for me to follow along the page. I would catch myself like having to use my finger and follow letter by letter. And while I see myself as a reader and I want to be more of a reader, reading felt nearly impossible and very much not fun. The other really big struggle I had was anxiety while I was driving. A lot of people have similar anxiety when they are in the grocery store or when they're in public places as they do as I was experiencing with the driving. I described it as the vision that I was seeing, the thing that my eyes were taking in, my brain didn't trust what my eyeballs was telling them. So when I was driving down the road, especially a busy road, I live where there's a lot of like 3-lane interstates and freeways, and I could see the line. I know I'm on the correct side of the line. I know I'm following the line. Like, I logically know I'm driving in a straight line. My brain felt like I was constantly veering into the thing next to me. It made me so intensely anxious to pass, especially semis, because I always felt like at any minute I was going to pull it, like to slam into them, even though I could see the line and I knew I was going straight. What I saw and the logic of what I saw did not match what my brain was interpreting it as. And so overall, whether I was driver or passenger, I had a lot of anxiety in the car. And also struggled with motion sickness, which I did go back and ask my mom, and she said pre-brain injury when I was a child, I never had issues with car sickness. I would actually like read a book in the car. And nowadays I could hardly look down. So if my husband was driving and asked me to look up directions or check something on the phone for him, I could only look at my phone a few seconds at a time without getting intensely nauseous. So I found a neuro-ophthalmologist. We did all the testing, and it turns out I had several different vision issues, basically where when you look at something, the two images should line up and you see that thing and your brain interprets it. What was happening is instead my things were not lining up. What my eyeballs were seeing was not lining up. And so then my brain had to do a lot of work to translate this image into a single image in my brain. And that creates a whole chain reaction of missed signals in your brain, of triggering kind of your anxiety, your fight or flight, of triggering the motion sickness, caused all sorts of problems. So there are a whole lot of ways that the symptoms for this BVD can show up. There are some online assessments that you can find out there with some checklists that'll indicate whether or not you more or less likely might be dealing with this. So if you have any weird, unexplainable like vision, anxiety, dizziness issues and nobody else has been able to explain it in any other way, I would maybe go down the binocular vision dysfunction rabbit hole here on TikTok. Sorry to send you down another rabbit hole. And if you think this is something you might be struggling with, find yourself a neuro-ophthalmologist. They are unfortunately a somewhat rare specialist, but they are the specific doctor that is going to for sure get you the best answers and the best treatment. If you got questions, drop them in the comment. I'm happy to answer what I can. Again, not a doctor. This is not my specialty. This is just something I have experienced, but I'll do what I can to help you out.